This conference will now be recorded.
Sir, how are you?
All right.
You? Y'all ready back here? Y'all, you good? Everybody good? I'd like to call the Board of Supervisors meeting to order. Turn me down, would you? We do, thank you. We do have a quorum. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. We do have a quorum. We do need to adopt an agenda. Anybody have anything we need to add to the agenda other than we do have a closed session after budget stuff?
Mr. Chairman, or Jonathan, do we typically, under closed session, do we add the section that we're going to
We can generally in advance or unless something pops up. So give me 1 second, Mr. Yao. It would be, if the board chooses to make the motion, the amended version for closed session would reflect code section 2.2-3711A1 for personnel.
Right, I'd like for that to be on the agenda. So I move that we approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. As always, public comment. Public comment. Public comment. Anybody watching us? That's pretty good. All right. Yes, sir, Jim.
Thank you. Jim Smith from Brightwood, speaking on behalf of my bride who is doing court reporting today. The word of the day is flatline. She suggests that we try to flatline all requests for a budget before we go to the taxpayers for more funding. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? All right. Getting right into the very bleak agenda. Finalization of the FY26 budget. Mr. Weekly, please.
Yes, I think we want to start on the capital, or you want to go through. So there's a lot we'll cover today. I'd like to start with capital, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, if I may. You may recall since our last meeting, the board had suggested that the joint CIP get together. That's your two members, school board members, as well as school administration and county administration. We have had that meeting, and thanks to the superintendent of schools who sent us a revised list based on that meeting. Last meeting we talked about, is there a need to borrow? There's different scenarios, and Jennifer will have that again today, also based on these reflective numbers. The school CIP needs over the next 2 years is listed at $2,687,130. And that was going back and revising some things. The biggest component was the 1.752 for the Waverly Elementary School makeup air units, and that contract's been signed, but we know that funding will need to be there for FY26 because any invoices could occur once FY26 fiscal year begins. So on the county side, the chairman and I had dialogue was, hey, the school's gone back through and revised and kind of crossed through some things, do so on the facility size for the county. So I've got, you don't want these big spreadsheets, but I've gone back through. There's no paving in this budget or in this debt service recommendations. Those were large numbers. I think between the county and the schools, it was roughly 2.6, almost $2.7 million, but that's not reflected in this capital project. So we put things in there, whether it's windows or if it's any mechanical needs, a lot of light and electrical updates, things of that nature. We did get our number down. It's currently at just under 2.2 million over the next 2 years. That covers anything from the IT replacement plan that we spoke of last time. And the sheet that I'm working off of, or you have in front of you, I'm going to hold this up, members of the board. This is the sheet I'm referring to over the next 2 fiscal years. So we've got our total down to just under 2 million. A total between the county and the schools would be $4,887,100. We're going to talk through different scenarios, and what I would say is just to challenge us to go back between the county and the schools and see if we can shave off that additional $887,000. I believe the county would have a large portion of that. I've got to get in touch with Virginia Sprinkler Company, or that's our contract vendor for fire, to see how many years remaining of the suppression system. There's a huge suppression system for our circuit court. That'd be about $200,000 there. The roof, when we had Cowan Roofing paint that roof, they said there's a lot of life left in that metal roof, so that'll take another 65 off the board. So I believe the county, we can bring that down. You know, if we take a generator out, do that via grant for sheriff's office, we can probably get it down another $500,000 or so, but we would work towards that 4 million number if the county would choose to borrow those funds. I can go individually through facilities if you want to look at that, but that is the total number after the revisions that we've made for all of our county facilities.
On Tuesday, we walked through the school CIP list line by line by line. Jonathan does have this folder with about 1 million tabs. Y'all want to do the same thing, or do you want to task him with removing another 800K from that 4 million?
Well, so there's nowhere to go with the school stuff. You talking about?
The school stuff, we certainly can go and walk back through that and do it as an overview on what the school has dropped off. Buses have substantially lessened down to 100K this year, and then, well, 75K this upcoming year, and then 25K hopefully before the end of the year, based on the 3 buses that the school found that Orange County had that still has life in them. The 75 in there was to put AC units in, but those are small items. The school has come off of like $1 million. I mean, it's a lot of money. Which direction do y'all want to go?
Yeah, let's go down them for the
Please.
county stuff,
There you go.
if you would.
You want to work off of the yellow sheet? Yes, sir.
this one?
Please.
2199.
Jonathan, work off the one you've got up there and walk down on the county side and then the school.
On the county side, as far as what makes up that
Yes.
219? All right, I need to go to my facilities tab. All right, and I'm going to go facility by facility. So there is no capital need within the animal shelter, the arcade. So really, we pick up at the circuit courthouse. Yeah, if you'll do that, please, it'll be easy for them to see it on the screen, even though they have the other paper through them before them.
Yeah.
We may have to cut them off. I was told last night somebody inadvertently changed our settings, which would drop the can. Alan, see what you can do, just best case scenario. If it has to go dark, please stay with us. Don't fall asleep. But,
That's excellent. Let's stick with that.
Okay.
Let's go.
all right. For the circuit courthouse, is that the one you're on now? We have window replacement, and that's throughout this, this capital plan proposal. Again, if you're looking at grouping items, those make sense. The largest item, as it says, paving, but that's been pulled out. You've made it clear where you stand on that. You have also in there, go up, Jennifer, the 62, go back. The 62,530 will need to come out. After they painted that roof, Calvin says you have many more years to go on that metal roof, so that is a deduction from the 2.199 that's not reflected yet. Continue to move forward. You have fire suppression. Again, that is a multi-complex. A lot of this is in the records room, not necessarily the historical or the minute book room up front. There's some there, but it's a larger storage area that's in a secure area of the courtroom. So it depends on what VSC would say. Right now, we have that in there, and as you can see, those three items added together, you're probably at $200,000. Continue down, there's $25,000 for doors. There's a lot of access entry things, so upgrades there. And then lastly, any security camera upgrades. That number has come down. IT did do some review of that. I think in last year's number, we had that around 100,000. So that has come down to replace the security camera system. We would definitely want to finalize that if you want to keep that in between the clerks, the judges, and the sheriff's office to make sure that whatever system they like, that 85 will meet that. We feel like IT has reviewed that, and that would be a satisfactory system. But again, those are the other folks who are tasked and charged with reviewing that system.
So Jonathan, overall, there's nothing in the circuit courthouse that's going to affect FY 26 or 27.
So what I would say, some of these items, and if I go through these spreadsheet, they'll be FY 26, FY 27, or FY 28. What I went through was I picked items that had 15 years or beyond, a lot of them 20 to 30-year life cycle spans, because I don't recommend borrowing money for things that are under 15 years if they're 10-year or less items. And what I would say of that whole 2.199970 before subtracting that 62,000 for the courthouse roof is these are projects I recommend you do with the debt service of $4 million. Of course, there's a school component of that. Even though it shows as FY 30.
And even though that's when we would expect to actually do it and use the money.
And you can make that choice. So the borrowing of the money, you could say, hey, we want to do this in FY 26 or 27, or we'll keep it FY 30, because your note, you're going to have to pay back over 7 years. So, and you're going to gain interest on whatever is staying in the bank as you draw down on it from your SNAP account.
Yeah, talking about that, I mean, if you could make money by borrowing money, everybody'd be doing it. Right? So, I don't get that part yet, but maybe something will click today, and I will do it. But.
We talked to Kyle Lauk just a little bit ago, and we're working off of the $4 million number. And that substantially reduces the interest payments within the first 2 years, 26 and 27. You should have at $4 million, you should have, and this is rough. Yeah. You should have, you got notes. You should have the payment on that, the interim financing payment on the 26 will be right at $100K. With the interest earned from the SNAP, you should have $500K. You should take the balance of $400, and I agree with Jim's original comment, and now it's kind of on both sides, that we need to be squirreling that money away to take care of the first real interest payment that would come out in 2028, which would be about $700K new monies without taking on anything else. And that's, or it'll be 650, excuse me. You'll have to come up with 50. But it does give you an ability there. And then the revenue side, Jonathan.
Would you like Jennifer to cover that?
Yeah, let's go down that.
I think that'll
Yeah, let's go down that path.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, this is good. Jennifer's got, this will lead perfectly into your comment, Supervisor Yao.
Okay.
Right, and you should have a printout in front of you as well. These are notes from my discussion with Davenport. The first at the top is the scenario that we discussed last week, and that was borrowing $6 million of debt funding, which could be serviced by raising 2 pennies in FY '26 and then 1.5 cents in FY '27. So we went back to Kyle and asked the question, if the Board of Supervisors decided to raise 2 pennies this year and nothing next year, what could the county afford in debt service? And it came back to $4 million. So that's why we're talking about a $4 million number now. And here's some notes. Because we would start with interim financing for that first year and a half, which is interest-only payments, the board could close on that $4 million this year and then add the additional $2 million to get to the full $6 million before closing on permanent financing. So a year and a half down the road, if you say, oh, we need more, we need that extra $2 million, you can do that during the closing of the permanent financing package. There is no prepayment penalty, obviously, on the loans. We did confirm that. When closing occurs, the full amount of the loan, let's say it's $4 million, goes into our account. We would reinvest those funds, those $4 million, into the, I think it's Virginia SNAP program. Right now, that program is earning between 4.25% and 4.35% interest. And then that money would sit there earning that interest, and we would then fund projects as needed out of that SNAP account as the board approves them over the next 2 years or so. I did ask Kyle about a line of credit. In the private sector, that's all we do is line of credits, it seems like. It is possible some banks may be willing to issue a line of credit if this is an option that the Board of Supervisors would like to look at. How that would work, we would draw from that line of credit as needed for capital projects, and we could have a sweep on it so it sweeps back and forth to zero, so we're paying less interest expense on it. The con with that is we wouldn't have the potential to reinvest and earn that interest income.
So I like to point out, that's great, Jennifer, thank you for that. I like to point out another real-life scenario of interest earned. So we don't borrow it to necessarily just, for the interest income, but you do gain it. So when you borrowed funds for, say, the radio project or the primary school, probably the radio project's the most relevant here. I mean, you did both at one time. But as you're drawing down and paying that invoices as they're coming in on the project, you're going to have a large portion still sitting in the bank. And I think some of those projects, we earned $500,000 to $600,000 interest income by it sitting in the bank. You got to be careful if there's arbitrage and stuff involved in there, which is a small fraction. But that's what's trying to be conveyed here. It is if you borrow this, you may not schedule and do all those projects at one. These are projects we put forth as examples to try to meet that $4 million mark for debt service. But you certainly would gain monies by it sitting in that SNAP account until you finalize your project list or do certain projects. You'll have a balance sitting in that bank account.
And one last thing, Davenport would go out to bid, would go out to the banks to bid and get the best package for the county, obviously. So it would be one of those situations where there'd be several banks and putting together packages for the county to look at.
All right, thank you.
So did you want to go back to the facilities to see? So that's the courthouse, War Memorial Building. Again, regardless of the years, it's about grouping items together. Again, to have those longer asset lives. I think as you go through there's windows as well. And some of these are existing windows or windows from beyond. So why do it? Well, energy, for one, efficiency. Acoustic tiles, if that was a standalone project, you probably wouldn't do it. But again, most of those, whether it's this building or other buildings, they have like a 25 to 30-year minimum lifespan. So it just makes sense if you're going there and grouping things, whether you're redoing carpet or lighting, acoustic tiles. Some of our buildings that's had prior leaks or things, they may need to be replaced. But that's why those are included. Continue on, there's some flooring in there. War Memorial is not just the courtroom below, it's the extension office, and that's a county building, it just has multifunction. As we learned when we went over to the extension dinner, they use that kitchen kind of as their commercial kitchen as well, so when you start seeing cabinetry and things in tile, it's some of that area as well is being recommended. And those are things we've put off in years past and try to get to it as we have funded maybe at year end. But if you're going to do some uplifting, whether it's lighting or different things, again, it's about putting together a packet of items that are beyond 15 years that you would hopefully not have to touch again for decades. The lift chair, you can make a determination if you want to keep that on there or take that off. We've moved that year in and year out. That keeps us ADA compliant. That building does not have an elevator, but it has one of those electric wheelchairs. It's beyond its life, but is it working? We test that thing, I think, about once a year. I can't tell you the last time somebody's used it, but to keep us compliant, we have to have that. So I left that in there,
I'll go ride. Keep going.
You take a ride?
Yeah, no, I'll go up there and ride it. We'll do an assessment of the situation.
You got things like fire pumps, more of that fire system, things of that nature. You'll find throughout these tabs there'll be electrical panel upgrades mentioned. Again, we'll take another hard look at those. Those are going off of age of building and recommendations of replacement. So that's in there. Fire alarm systems, again, a lot of that stuff is just dated. And I've already talked about the cabinetry. The last item there is refinishing, whether it's the seats you sit in like we have an auditorium or some of the pews that are up there at the where the clerk and the jury and all sit. So that makes up that $296,855. Any questions before we move on to the next facility? All right, hearing none. Social services. Some small items there, but they need some exterior painting. Fortunately, that building is a majority of brick, but there is some, around dormer windows and some of the upper part of that building. It will need some painting. Wood repair, we've had some rot. There are things where it's going to have to be addressed even while replacing the windows. So there's an allotment for that. Flooring, carpet, that's been over there for years, and some of you have meetings in social services or may have been in other areas of that building. It's probably time. If you want to push that, you can, but I'm just saying it's probably seen its life. I would not probably sleep on that floor. You can definitely walk on it. So that takes you at $56,000. Again, you're thinking about grouping a project. So whether it's a facility that's low at $56,000 or a courthouse at 200-some thousand, you're grouping projects. Moving on to sheriff's office. The sheriff's office, let me make sure that I can click on the right one. Again, some acoustic tiles, some wall finish prepping. That number is a little bit lower because Mooney and them have painted some of that facility when they moved some folks around. But the dispatch center has not, and then the upper part of that building has not been painted. But the lower part of the sheriff's office has. So they would leave some more monies to finish that out. Your biggest ticket item is generators. So normally if you have a generator, you also have an automatic transfer switch. That's a little over $150,000 of that. Certainly we would try a grant. Even if you left that in, we wanted to leave it in as worst case scenario. You can get a grant funding, and that's $150,000 less that you would use. But that is an older generator. And then again, there's some panels that are mentioned in there. And then interior lighting is a $20,000 allotment for that, for $215,000 total for that facility.
I don't think that, we understand it's an aging machine, and we certainly need a generator up at dispatch. You don't think that's low enough hanging fruit where we should pull that out to achieve that 800?
Well, the other thing of it is I'm not an electrical engineer, but you may want to have that properly sized because and Mr. Dawson may be able to speak to this, but the generator that's there, I think is overkill. So sometimes you don't have efficiencies because of that. But certainly we put it in there as an asset replacement item.
Is that the one that smokes?
Yes.
Okay, didn't we talk about the possibility of just overhauling that engine, $12,000, $14,000?
I think that one, I think we are looking for 800K to come off of this number.
Yes.
I think that going, sorry, Jonathan.
No, you're fine.
We are looking for 800K. We need to drop this thing down. I think 155, that's a very obvious one that we should go down the path. Brian will work with Gavin and some other folks trying to get a grant for it, or to go down the path of rebuilding that motor, and that's what we gotta do.
Yeah.
Were we also gonna look at diverting that exhaust away from the
Yeah,
intake?
the 20-foot smokestack, yes, it sounds like, or make it run when, hopefully. there's
We,
perfect
yeah, we've already
electricity.
adjusted the exercise timer, but the next step would be you'd have to extend the exhaust pipe above that roof line.
I think that's, those two items, the switch and the generator should come off.
Okay.
I mean, so there you go. Let's keep,
Now you're down to 60? Huh?
Yes, sir, Mr. Yao.
the other caveat that goes with this, and I'm sorry, when we did the schools the other day, we kind of thought about all of this maintenance in a practical way. We certainly need to be doing the exact same thing when it pertains to funding CIP and moving into this. Like, having it budgeted is one thing. Spending that money, we have to do our due diligence and, you know, there you go. Please, John.
Spend it as planned.
I think it's spend it as planned, but then go and analyze each different item, because, I mean, all of this adds up. I mean, we're talking about, we haven't gotten to CID yet. I think carpet's in there for CID, and Jonathan's right. We need to package and kind of do these projects as we can afford and facility oriented. If there is very low traffic, I would save $25,000 in a heartbeat. I mean, Jonathan, please.
All right. Moving on, this will be CID, and I apologize for some of these names. It's just what these buildings have been known as. And so old ABC is the CID, the investigation building that the county owns. So what you had initially for FY '26, before we started talking debt service and all that stuff, was the roof. We did get an updated price. That older number was, I think, around 50,000, but that is at 88,000. And that is a definite. I think when this whole journey began, the budget work sessions, you talked about what has to be done. I said, if there is a priority number one, it is this membrane roof at CID. So you have the roof, you have some windows in there, again, some acoustic tile replacement, and some of those, you know, like I said, some just had to be replaced because of prior leaks. But moving on, flooring, carpeting, the chairman just talked about that. Also have some electrical panels in there. I don't believe those were updated. That facility in 2009 had a facelift on some of it, but that was more putting in walls and things for office space, because that was a magistrate office at one time, and I can't remember what it was before that. 911. So there was some reconfiguration when planning and building and zoning and all was pulled up to that location before they were moved back down here in 2012. So overall, it's 128,000. 128.3 is the number for that facility as a recommendation.
I'm gonna go on another tangent here. Dustin, we see cited multiple times through this report that we need to be replacing electrical panels. Why are we replacing all these electrical panels? I mean, is that standard for?
Without looking at it, I don't know. If they're not Federal Pacific, I don't know that I'd be messing with them unless you're getting into an issue of, you know, the breaker is obsolete and can't get them. But, I mean, there's a company called Supervisors. You can pretty much get what you want in 2 days.
I just think that's, I mean,
I'd say pull it unless it's a fire hazard. I mean, I don't know. I mean,
It goes back to the issue too. Part of the prioritization has to be on the stuff that if we don't do it, it's gonna cost us 10 times as much when something goes wrong.
very much, but we have an expert
Right.
on this specific thing.
Which questions me, Mike, and I go back to what you're questioning, I mean, who's actually making these assessments?
Well,
Is it book value, or some type of study, which, you know what I'm saying, where,
I can tell you it was a liquor store, so it's got a good commercial, you know, service in it. It's not hairy homeowner stuff. It's a commercial building. And that stuff does last longer. I don't know, how old's the building?
I'd have to pull up
Is it
that
50 years
report.
old?
I'd have to pull up that.
I mean, I'm working in facilities that have equipment that's 60 years old right now, and it's fine.
That's,
So to answer Mr. Jewett's question, the schools in the county had that facility condition assessment report by Bureau Veritas. They are I guess you could say a facilities company that do indexing and look at lifespan and all that stuff. So that's where those, when you have lifespan, then you have useful life, you have, that's what's been used so far, and then the remaining life cycle, that's where those numbers came from.
But then when you open the panel and nothing's sparking and nothing's black.
and it doesn't have the old twist-in fuses,
Oh.
and no twist-in fuses, which we
Right.
know none of these buildings have. I would think that our recommendation would be to Jonathan, and I'm not advocating, because somebody needs to go look at these things. Somebody that knows the business.
I would just say, Mr. Chairman, if
Leave 'em
hearing the
and move
board's
on.
approach, you can remove them, and if you want, then put that as your contingency.
I'll walk through the facilities and look at these things.
Thank you.
You can always put in your contingency, you have a contingency fund you set every year, and if you run across the hot item, do an emergency procurement on
Let's
it.
start pulling. I hate going backwards with you, Jonathan, but can we roll back and on electrical, it looks like we've got, what, $5,600 here on the old ABC?
Yes, sir.
Can we go back and hit the previously discussed tabs? And
Yeah,
see what
start with
those
the
are?
courthouse, please, because
Yeah.
there was nothing in the first two tabs. I'm not sure if I had anything in the courthouse or not. Yeah, there's nothing in the
All right.
courthouse, so
Nothing.
let's
Go
go to
War
War
Memorial.
Memorial. I think there were a few in the War Memorial. Let's take a peek.
And you need to go down the path on the fire suppression, like you stated.
All right, I have nothing for War Memorial.
No.
Go back to the
You've got-
circuit courthouse. I'll
No,
highlight.
You do on War Memorial. Judd is right. You've got 8K there,
Hold on.
and then,
That's there.
and then we start getting into lighting and stuff.
All right, so that I need to remove from the
distribution
circuit
panel.
court.
Yeah, pull 8 out of the circuit court.
34 and 35.
When were you in the circuit court last, Dustin? For your nefarious activities.
Problem is they have, I mean, there's
Do the
so
lights
much
need to
load in
start? Is
there.
that-
Who knows
I
if
mean,
it's
I'm sure
still,
they're old. I'm sure they're old.
I walked through there, I mean,
It's
I was there
18,000.
last week as far as, but I was not in the courtroom.
yeah, they're,
But
Let's leave that. Let's pull the electrical panel, stay focused on it.
so pull the 18K
8K.
out. The 8K or the 18K, there's a,
Oh, yeah, 18. 18's better than 8.
okay,
18.
all right. Let's go to social services. There's nothing in social services as far as electrical panels.
Sheriff.
Sheriff's office, we do,
Well, that's we already talked about pulling the one, we're pulling the 155, you'd add 2,500,
you got about 10K of
Yep.
panels there.
pull 10 out of the sheriff.
So you're basically removing 165 out of the sheriff's office tab.
Yeah, 10K, all right.
And then-
10K electrical sheriff.
And then back to old ABC, I think we already
We
covered,
did,
but that's
yes, sir.
that's 5,600.
I would like to start referring you to it the same as Dustin. Estes House.
All right, going to the Estes House, let's go up. There's an issue with, we did some patching around the bottom, the back steps that lead up to victim witness. There was some separation around the railing that you hold walking up the steps. And if you go over and look, there's also some things going on with the landing. So that $20,000 allotment would allow you to repair, or probably take that off and do some reconfiguration of either decking, type of entry, but something needs to be done with that entry. If you want to pull that and say, Jonathan, see what you got in contingency in FY '25 in the year, that's what we'll do. But that's why that 20,000 is there.
On that porch.
You've got some interior painting, caulking, and patching. These are things that Ms. Berry has pointed out over several years, so it's putting that in. I will say the HVAC units, we did have, after your approval FY '25, I'd say only a few months ago, Ritterberger came out when they were doing their service and took another look. So those units were not done this year. They believe they'll have a couple more years left. But even if you go by that standards, that's why they're put in here under FY '28 as a recommended replacement. And I do not see any electrical boxes, so the total is $57,000 proposed for the Estes House or the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office, whichever you know it as.
Anybody have any items they want to pull on that one? Let's go to the next.
All right.
Transfer station.
The transfer station, all right.
Yeah, go ahead.
So a lot of at the beginning, and a lot of this has to deal with the metal and panels, whether they're side panels or the front of the roof or the roof itself. It needs some attention. It's beat up pretty, and that would include the backside as well. It's beat up pretty bad. And these numbers would reflect labor and material, but that's what that 40,000 and 5,000 are covering, are recommended. You have a couple different type of lighting systems out there. A lot of those are in that upper rafters. You really don't see those when you go out there because it's daytime, but if you ever had to be out there for night or whatever, because they are required to clean that floor up and have it tidy before they leave and go home for the day. So even if the transfer station closes at 4:30, you know, those winter days where it gets dark around the end of 5, they're required to stay there to get that clean. You never know, someone has to come and work on that floor drain, the leachate, all that stuff. So that's why those lights are there. We can try to do those in-house, but we put an allotment in there because they need to be replaced. So that covers the 16, the 4,000, and the 2,000. Your biggest item is the scale replacement. I talked to Apple Valley, who has that scale and services that scale, several years back. And at that time, they said probably another, 3 years or so. So we're really hitting that mark.
With that being such a big item, there's not the potential just to replace the load cells instead of replacing the whole decking. Is the decking failing?
I don't think the decking is failing, Mr. Chairman.
Or the substructure?
Right. I don't think that itself is failing, but this would allow replacement, because you got to have the scales. That's what your tipping and certification, all that. And we get our invoices regular that have their tier weight, so we're tracking to make sure that what they're charging is what is going in and out. So we do allow for that. The 30,000 is what we already talked about steel plates, the push wall inside the tipping floor. So all in.
100,000 real quick, Jonathan, so we don't know that's.
You
that
can
100
replace.
completely.
I have 3 sets of multiple ton certified scales, and I use Apple Valley as well. Unless the metal infrastructure on the tractor trailer scales, the yellow ones that are out there, if the metal is not failing, you can buy the load cells and you can buy the monitor that's associated with it just to upgrade. I would guess you can do it for a quarter of that price. No, it is not very challenging. Oh, you can get them pretty easily. They I'm sure have tractor trailer cells that they can slide right under there.
Yeah, it's probably the easiest thing.
I don't know what the right
trying to look
number
at
is, but I
the
do think
narrative.
that's one that we probably should analyze. And we certainly want them right because they're legal for trade. But I would go back and look at that one differently.
Be safe to cut it in half right now?
Yes. Unless you need the full deck.
Yeah.
But did anybody? I can ride out there and take a look.
The thing is, I can
familiar.
get a report from Apple
Apple
Valley on that.
That's cool.
Let's see, the waste cyclone center was
do you-
constructed 2002.
Do you want to leave it at Apple Valley is, well, frankly, they're the only show in town, other than the state, and that's an excellent group. Do you want to leave it as 100 and then you?
I
see
would
if
leave
you
it
can
because
go-
it's easier to back it off. But we know, because initially that item that 100,000 represents inflation. When initially that came to us, I think it was shown as FY '22, and I called Apple Valley because they inspected, and they were like, hey, you can probably get another 3 years. And we're at that point now. So I think it's easier to leave it in if we can get components of it replaced where we get another 10, 15, whatever years out of it. Certainly that's what we'll do.
The tip and floor lights, is that just interior?
Majority of those are interior, and there's some that goes beyond where the trailer parks as well. I think there's a couple on the building itself. Certainly if the wall pack lights are working, we're not gonna replace them. But majority of those, Mr. Dawson, yes, are the interior lights. I don't know if they're, have to be rated a certain thing. Certainly you don't really expect to have methane gas there. Now, the closed landfill, you have blowers that deal with methane, so I don't know if there's some travel there that they make these intrinsically safe lighting fixtures, but that's what primary of those fixtures are in that interior, the tip and floor. All right, any more questions on the transfer station?
We're not doing much roofing for 5K.
That's a combined, there's two different items there, whether it's, well, it says roofing metal replacement, but I look at that as a bulk item of 45K to take care of roof or the sidewalls around that, but it's, yeah, it needs some attention.
Let's go floor house.
Chlor house, that should be a lower item.
0. Doing great on the floor
Yeah,
house.
you all just did a roof. That was one of your FY '25. It looks good, so if you haven't seen it, please go out. We pulled other things out, even though the plumbing shows it's, 40-year lifespan and replacing 2 year, we pulled that out. Unless there's a backup or something, it's not as used as often as a courthouse or a public building, so that's 0. Red Barn, we're gonna skip past that because we gotta figure out what we're doing on that, but there's no cost associated with
Boy,
that,
this-
obviously.
I think we should get rid of the further evaluation needed. Comments, do we need to put in a placeholder there with the potential of 150K? Which is the wrong direction to go, but that is what the comment was.
So it's
previously.
totally up to the board, Mr. Chairman. What the goal would be, and we're trying to get that out soon so it can have a bid, but would be to secure FY '25 funding to not make this an FY '26 cost. That would be part of your debt service. The number thrown out there, but again, we don't have a bid on it yet, is well, I'm probably working against myself talking about that with bids, but you all discussed a number. The goal was to use your insurance check and then contingency to make up that
From
kind of
FY
project budget to build that facility, but do it out of FY '25. If the board would like to see that as FY '26, and you put that in your debt service, it's totally up to you.
Let's move on.
All right, 414, the building we're sitting in right now. We did put windows in here. Again, if you're looking at a total package for debt service and things that are needed, certainly I believe these are all original windows around here, and just like I'm sure the school board office or other older facilities, it's all about efficiencies, and those were not replaced when this building was renovated between 2019 and 2021, whatever year. Substantial completion was April of 2021, so I know it was before that time, but windows were not done. I did not allow for any additional HVAC work, but this building at some point needs to be properly zoned. I'll give you an example. The conference room thermostat and ductwork also is piped into Angela's office, which is deeper into the finance. Finance has their own thermostat unit, but it doesn't do an interior office that's in the department. It does. So it's all wacky up here. We make it work, and the ladies are nice. We put space heaters, sometimes multiple space heaters in cold areas, but
Windows in here, if the admin building, the school board admin building,
I
they get
agree.
windows, we don't get them.
I agree.
Agreed.
I agree.
100%.
Goodness gracious.
I agree. What about,
Yeah.
all right, everybody good on windows? We're
Yes.
pulling windows. Let's go down to.
pulling windows from this building, because I have
Yes,
windows in other buildings.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Okay.
We'll get there. Let's do this one, pull 40. And then the other one on this building, which piece of, concrete sidewalk are you doing for 15K, Jonathan?
So that's to give us there may be some that leads up to this back walk where employee parking is, but definitely the sidewalk, it doesn't get used often. A lot of times during tax season, or if folks are going in between our offices and building and zoning, a lot of folks still come up here for that. We did some patching of that last year, and that's kind of going out again. That sidewalk needs to be more than just patched, because it also doesn't have the proper width. It's a very narrow sidewalk, so it's to have some funding in there to take care of sidewalks up here. Well, I don't know if the employees park, the county does own, so when you look at the library on the side, all that lot except for up against the side of the library, I think for those handicap spots, that's county parking, so you could park county vehicles up there and leave. A couple times I've said, because we've added people down there now with IT, it's like, all right, during tax season, somebody rock, paper, scissors is gonna have to park up there and walk around. There's sometimes I'll park over there and walk up as well, but it's not only for employees, but it's for citizens as well. So it's just not a good sidewalk. So if you take the 40 out, you're at 15. If you say get rid of the 15, we'll do that as well. But at some point, we're gonna have to address the sidewalk, whether it's out of contingency or whatever, we need to take care of it.
Alan, I'd assume you use that sidewalk more than anybody. How's the sidewalk? This is a good direction to go.
I would just say, if you're taking the windows out, you might as well take the 15 out, because you're trying to
There you
do a
go.
project as a
There you
whole,
go.
and it's, yeah.
We're moving in the right direction. 15K more.
All right. 410, that's the building that used to be the health department. Now it's commissioner and treasurer and so forth. So we have windows there. Let me just scroll down through.
Yep.
That building was built in 96.
Everybody, 30K, gone. Let's
All
go.
right, so we are nixing this, the windows.
Health, windows.
There's nothing in the next tab, which is the Cricketsville Museum. Max and Historical Society do a good job. I believe there's nothing in the EMS. That's the modular building. So at the time when we did this assessment, we only had the modular building, even though that's set on the property that was the former rescue squad. There's 2 parcels, and that's set on the smaller parcel. But we're not recommending anything for that. We did a roof. I think we spent $3,000 or $3,400 on that last year. So the rest of it can, it is what it is. If we have to power wash it, we'll do it ourselves. But nothing on EMS. In Kemper Mansion, nothing. So if you took it out, what's the new summary at the top, Ms. Warren? Go ahead.
1,218,785.
That's the remainder, Ms. Warren?
Yes.
So that's just a facility, so we'd have
Where
to
did
go
we
back and
start?
add these.
We s-
It was 1 million on the FY 26, 27 was 1,492,385 was the original.
And to be clear, that's just on the facility side, because if you look at the bottom where it has schools and counties, you see that 2199970. Well, that's if you add the other things in there, such as the CAD equipment in 911, the server equipment for IT. That's where you get back to that 2,199.
Can you repeat your number down from 1492?
1,218,785. And I'll
Fine.
put that in that spreadsheet now on the screen so we can look at that. Just save this. Just gonna do this. Let's go to this one.
It's not enough.
Yeah, now if I change the number here to the 1,218,785, it's now at 4,613,500.
It's not enough.
Now, I did just get word from Mr. Barry that the server project, equipment project came in a little bit lower. Is that correct, Mr. Barry?
Yeah, we don't want to
No.
give that away.
Okay. It's possible that that 89,000 number will go down, though. So that's just something I wanted to point out.
So right now, before going back through any further, I think I'm tracking Jennifer a reduction of 273.6.
Yeah. This is what we're at right now, 4613. 2687.
Did we take, and that was taking the generator out of the sheriff's as well?
Yes.
All right.
Please. Please.
Have you considered, is it plausible, and if so, would there be, have you pursued the option of moving those servers into the cloud and not having to maintain them on-prem?
We did pursue that option, and we received a quote for it. It would be prohibitively expensive. I can give you rough numbers, but we did only receive one quote for it at this moment. It would be around a 3 times increase for, every year, we would essentially pay 2/3 of what we would pay for physical hardware every 5 years. So it would be a substantial increase.
Is that security, because of security?
The hosting,
Yeah.
where it would be hosted at, and then the actual hardware itself.
Oh. There you go.
But we can reach out for additional quotes if y'all would like us to pursue that.
Through Azure, AWS, or somebody else?
It was somebody else.
So Azure, I don't know. But you gotta have a full amount until you're reimbursed.
We did have a discussion with it. We believed it would also be cost prohibitive. We didn't get an official quote from them, but we did receive a ballpark number. Anytime.
So what, in FY '26, what is the 118,000 facilities?
That's the 88,000 for the CID roof and the 30,000 for the steel plating of the push wall
Oh,
at the
yeah,
tipping
okay.
floor.
Got it.
All right, Mr. Chairman, some further revisions, Ms. Warren's catching. If we take the 62,530 out of the courthouse, because the metal roof, we're told, is lasting a little longer, I also recommend go back in, if you all are fine with this, replace the metal as you go with whatever your year-end funds or contingencies are year over year until you complete that project. That'll take another 45K, so with that 45, go to transfer station, please. And at the very top of the screen, there's a $40,000 line item, and there's a $5,000 line item, both for metal.
Okay, so those come out.
I'd recommend taking those out, and let's see what
Is
that
it
gets
going to be a
us.
safety issue out there?
It's not, I mean, it looks horrible, and I don't know if DEQ will cite you and say, hey, your building looks like a slum, but we do need to replace it, but I just think
think there's
if
another
we're trying to
mechanism.
do our part to reduce that $887,000 number, we need to kind of pick our places and
All right, so
go
the
from there.
new,
I need the scales more than I need to,
Yeah.
I can fit
agree.
those panels in.
so the new number is 1,111,255 for that. And I'll put it in the model here so we can see it.
So Brian, while she's doing that, there's nowhere to go on the call handling equipment, is there? I mean, I think we talked about that
Yeah,
before.
typically, it's a computer system.
Yeah.
Computer system, end of life is typically 5 years. You could stretch that out into out years, but that's obviously the lifeline for an emergency. Not sure we want to take a chance on something like that.
And it's not like you can phase it over a couple of
No,
years.
no, it's a bank of servers, switches,
Yeah.
it's hooked up to fiber from AT&T and geo-redundant directions. Now, there is a grant out there that we've actually received for 200K on that when it's passed through. So we're gonna have to pay for it up front and we get reimbursed. So they won't pay for all of it, but they pay for a good chunk.
Out of that 420?
Yeah, they'll pay the 200, we got a grant for 200K on that.
So we can reduce it by 200?
Well,
You still have to spend it. and
So-
then
Right.
we get reimbursed.
we will get reimbursed, so that cash will come back.
Okay,
But it's a reimbursable grant. And it's not awarded 100%, or is it? We don't know for sure.
Jonathan, what
We got the VDM letter today that, for the 200,000. I think it has a 2-year expiration date. Yeah.
So to answer your question, I believe cash-wise, we could reduce this from 420
go.
down to 220, because we are going to be getting that cash
Yeah.
back. So that's my
do that.
opinion. Even though we'll have to appropriate the full 420.
That's fine.
Reduce it down to 220.
Closer.
And I'll put a note. Yes, because we do have that cash coming back of 200,000.
so when we appropriate the 420, that means we're gonna have to dip into,
Open or fund balance.
yeah. Okay, knowing that it'll come back, golly.
Yeah, but that drops us down, that
Yeah.
puts us at $503,000 down so far.
Yeah,
So on the
Alright.
screen is your total now, if you wanted the totals.
So I think I'm showing that
So we need
reduction
300.
of 581, 130, right?
Oh, I didn't get that. No, didn't you pull 220 off of it?
Pulled 200. I don't think 220.
This is correct,
Did you pull 220 or 200?
200.
Yeah,
All
I
right,
pulled
excuse me,
200,
excuse me.
because that's what you're
Less.
getting
We're
back.
Going the wrong direction.
so Tina, Orange gonna sell any more buses in FY '27? That was a great deal.
Which facility is that in, Tina?
Watson.
Middle school, right?
Let's pull it. I mean,
Has Dr. Timmons brought up that that one's critical or anything?
He said they're really old and something about, they're old and I don't know that they're original to the building. They might have been replaced once, but there's a problem with them. But I would say, like you're gonna do, look at them and see if they're,
Yeah, it would be similar to our situation, age and, is it parts or anything like that? What's that? Yes, they're saying remove it. Is that right, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Take that 25K, okay.
We're now at 4,280,970.
Another option, I'll go through these tabs again, is if you want to, let me see what building it would make sense to I mean, the judge isn't fussing at me about the fixed seating at War Memorial for 36K. Maybe you take that. On your War Memorial tab, at the very bottom, fixed seating, courtroom, church wood, benches, pews, replace. As you may recall, Roger had these seats reconditioned. That's why you still see the desk, but he had the seating done. So you would be looking at similar things, either for seating or replacing the seating where the jury and everyone sits. You can take that out if I mean, it's a low-hanging item, but take it out. Is that what I'm hearing? All right, go to War Memorial, please, and that last item, remove.
Pull the wheelchair lift out too. If that thing's still working, that's 23K we can get rid of. If it's certified and safe, and we're not pending some kind of decertification, I don't see any reason.
Column or row 11 here. Number 11. Yeah, take that out.
If you were pulling the 36K for the seats, and I was in there for nefarious activities a couple weeks ago, or months ago. All those chairs look pretty good, and I don't think the carpet's that bad either. If we're not going to replace the chairs, then I would think that a bunch of these items should be coming off. The carpeting, floor carpeting, is that right or wrong? I mean, there's 15K, you've got some vinyl. Where are those?
The vinyl flooring.
Yeah, you've got.
That's the bathrooms upstairs and then the kitchen area upstairs.
Yeah, because the rest of it's hardwood, isn't it?
Yes, sir. It's some, I don't know if you call that laminate or vinyl flooring that's in that, actually, there is some out there on that. Remember they showed us, when you get near the stairs at that upper landing. So I'm hearing get rid of
Yeah.
15 on the carpet.
Carpet, and what about the vinyl flooring tiles at 5K a shot, 8 and 9?
We're on the War Memorial Building. So we're take off row 11 and 10.
I think ceiling tiles are on, I mean, we're basically pulling the project, is what we're doing. Ceiling tiles, I think, go right along with it.
Yep.
I mean, that one's it's got a super weird roof anyway. I would think that we would do something I would think we would do some improvements to make it not so weird.
All right, so we're taking the acoustic tile, the 32,000 out?
Yeah.
All right. Did you say leave the tile in, or?
How bad's the tile, Jonathan? You know?
The kitchen area is the worst. I haven't used the bathroom over there in years. I probably should peek at this project, but the kitchen is, it's more of a,
Been in there. If you want to leave 5K in for the kitchen tiles, I'm fairly okay with that.
I mean, if, I would say, Mr. Chairman, if we're reducing that project that much, and if it's a matter of 5,000 or 10,000 for tile, then, again, as that project goes down in that building, then the 5,000, it's year-end money or
Pull that. I
Whatever.
think we've got to pull those. Pull
All right.
all of it.
So
Use
we'll
your
pull 8
monies.
and 9.
Did we already we cut the 8K. All right, we pulled the 2 electrics to get to 18. I don't know enough about fire suppression equipment other than it's very expensive. What is it?
That building over there was originally, it was a gymnasium upstairs, it's all wood. I don't want to jinx it, but Brian and I had, remember that one time we got a scare? It was actually an off-gassing of an HVAC, and they sent the house over there, but if that ever starts, good luck.
Let's leave the fire suppression. I think that's like maybe having insurance. I do think that if you're gonna go with the year-end money potentially on the kitchen floor for 5 or 10 with the bathroom, while pulling it out of CIP, I would think that you would pull the 3,500 and then the 15K for the cabinets.
Pull the 15K for cabinets, okay.
And the
And the
3,500
countertops?
above.
Okay, so we're pulling 41 and 40.
There's another 18.5.
That probably took a good 80,000. I'm not sure where
That's
you're
a bunch.
tracking.
All right, so the summary on that now is 976,755. And let me put that in the other spreadsheet. Whoops, sorry, I'm in the wrong cell here. Okay, so the total now is 4,146,470.
Getting there.
Yeah, pretty close.
136K more.
You want to,
All right,
You
now,
want-
administrative
Yeah.
you want to take,
panel.
My opinion is this is close enough. I think within, since we're within $150,000, with some of the contingency money we see at the end of the year, we could make up this difference here.
There you go.
All right. You mean with what typically is left in the,
And contingency, usually it's around
Right now,
300,000.
aren't we right at 300?
We have like 334 right now. Okay, so are we good with the 4-1? And I'll switch over to the next topic. Does anyone want to talk about any more capital?
Everybody, 4-1, let's go to the next topic.
Okay. Do you have anything you want to present? If not, I'm going to go with the next slide. So I did want to talk a little bit about fund balance. Supervisor Yao brought up a very, very, very important point that I need to bring up. In front of you, there's two printouts. The first one, these are from the audit report, and I wanted to just, for anyone who's interested in understanding a little bit more about fund balance and our financial policies, this kind of breaks down fund balance for you and what it encompasses between non-spendable, restricted, committed, assigned, and unassigned. So I put that language in here for you and just highlighted the definition of unassigned fund balance, which is the residual classification of the general fund. And it's an important note, other governmental funds might report a negative balance in this classification as the result of overspending for specific purposes for which amounts had been restricted, committed, or assigned. And when fund balance resources are available for a specific purpose in more than one classification, it is generally the county's policy to use the most restrictive funds first in the following order: restricted, committed, assigned, and unassigned as they are needed. And the other thing I put in here I wanted to point out, this is from our June 30th, 2024 audit report. This page breaks down our fund balance between those categories. And as you can see in assigned fund balance, our financial policies talk about the debt stabilization reserve, our budget stabilization reserve, and our joint services stabilization reserve. Those three amounts are here, and it's broken down, and they are sitting in assigned fund balance. The unassigned is just one lump sum, as you can see here. At the end of FY24, I highlighted the two numbers between general fund and capital, and the total fund balance, I highlighted those numbers as well. The reason I wanted to point this out, if you can kind of remember this snapshot of assigned, in our discussions last week, you'll probably recall us talking about asset maintenance, replacement, and enhancement policy. And I wanted to talk about this policy. I brought up on the screen for you the exact language of the policy. This was approved on April 27th of 2021. That would be fiscal year 21. There is a printout as well for you on your handout. It is front and back pages, I apologize. So, but basically, if I scroll down to the yellow highlighted section, this is what I wanted to point out. It says, beginning in the fourth budget year after the adoption of these policies, and I'm going to stop there. These policies were adopted April of 2021. That would be fiscal year '21. So this is saying beginning in the fourth budget year after adoption of these policies. So in my mind, that's fiscal year '25. The county will provide for major maintenance of its facilities each year with a goal of reinvesting or setting aside for future use 2.5% of the replacement value of county facilities. For the purpose of this calculation, we use net book value of depreciable real property shall be used as an approximation. The county will make such a provision by assigning a portion of its prior year available unassigned fund balance beyond the 18% rainy day fund. So in other words, we have to have that 18% rainy day fund in unassigned, but if this policy, if the board continues using this policy of asset maintenance reserve, we would also have to have 2.5% of the net book value of depreciable real property. And I've calculated that for you at the bottom. If we were to use just FY24 figures from the audit report, it would be $867,017 that you set aside in taking it up to that assigned fund balance section, like those others, budget stabilization are sitting up there. This would be a new one sitting up there. And the reason that in past audit reports you haven't seen that is because of the language saying beginning in the fourth budget year. So this is, it's going to apply with the FY25 budget, or excuse me, audit. So when you get the FY25 audit report, Davenport, excuse me, not Davenport, our audit team will have that statistic in there, should, based on our policies. So, and this is just a snapshot of Exhibit 1 on the audit report, and you can see where I got those figures. I took the line item, buildings and equipment net of depreciation, the number for the county, the schools, and Parks and Rec. There's 3 numbers there. And that's where I calculated that 2.5%. So the only reason I bring this up is it does affect unassigned fund balance, and a couple options. The board, I believe the board can wait on this until the FY25 audit is completed to have this set aside. I don't think it has to be done until then. So another option would be if you don't feel like it's a useful policy, you could, because we're going to update the financial policies, we're going to send you a draft to look at. We could remove it, reduce it. It's up to board decision on that. Another thing to note that I found interesting in the policy, it says at the bottom, last sentence, notwithstanding the above, specific major maintenance projects identified and incorporated into our annual operating budget shall also be considered as contributing to that 2.5. So what that means is in the facilities budget, facilities operating, we have maintenance building.
That we just went through, yeah.
Well, it's in the operating. We've got $50,000, $100,000 worth of items in repairs and maintenance in the operating, for example. You can reduce the 867 down by 100,000. So that's what that language says.
We have a Philadelphia lawyer write that one?
Worse. A lot of these policies, the joint stabilization and all those came into place, I think around 2018, 2019, when they were initially drafted. So.
Yeah, that was my question, was the 2.5 was inclusive in that 18% or not? So it's not.
No, you caught something that I did not catch. The 18% has to include starting next year.
Yeah, right.
We're fine now because of the way it's written, but starting when we look at unassigned fund balance next budget season, we'll go to the FY25 audit report, and we'll have to calculate and put that up and make sure that's an unassigned fund balance.
The good news is, I mean, your PAYGO stuff, you've been essentially doing that. It's just showing it in your audit, but you've got 3 areas you can show that. So it can, it could be a contingency, it can be part of your overall operating within the facilities budget or capital itself. So you got a ability to hit that 2.5% with those three different funding sources.
So any questions about that upcoming financial policy metric that's coming with the next budget cycle audit report? Now, if you want to set it aside for this budget cycle, you can. There's nothing that says you can't. But I did want to point out that the way I'm reading this, FY '25's audit report is what we would go by for those numbers.
Why would we set it aside right now
Right.
if it's still gonna be sitting there, non-obligated, Ms. Warren?
Well, it would go up into the assigned
Yes, ma'am.
fund balance section from unassigned. So basically, it's just moving it up to assigned so that you know that you've set aside the right amount per your policies in assigned. And then your 18% on unassigned, you have to make sure you have that for your rainy day fund.
Oh, yeah, that 18%, I was thinking about that the other day. Is that best business practices? It's just that our policy, or is that state, driven number? I can't remember.
It was put all together by Davenport when we adopted all of these. And at
Yeah.
that time, right after we adopted, and I think it was MJ was our finance director at that time, the debate was whether or not to raise it, because they advocated there for about a year
Yeah,
to
raise
raise it up to like 21, 22, and that has since fallen back. Is 18% a reasonable number, Ms. Warren? It certainly seems like it.
That's what I read when I was reading what the recommendation was I think 18% was what I'll have to go back to that resource, but I remember 18%.
It certainly ought to, it ought to be a calculation of some sort, like, the average person should have, 3 months of operating expenses or living expenses in the savings account, blah, 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 whatever the formula is, so. I just couldn't remember whether it was dictated by the state, just best business practice or what, so, okay,
All right.
With, yeah, I'm getting ahead.
yeah.
I'm getting ahead. Ms. Warren, where would you like to go next? Anybody see any, anybody see any reason to put the 867 into an obligated fund at this junction? All right, what's next, Ms. Warren?
All right, the other thing I did bring today is a copy of all of the various budget models that we talked to last week. The one assumes the 3-cent increase and no change to personal property tax. There's one model with no debt funding. There's one model with debt funding at $6 million, and we can create now a new debt funding model at $4 million. So let's see, what we've got going on. I think the one with the 4 million number, the opening balance appropriation was, I want to say it was right at 743.
That's correct.
Let me pull that up.
You say that's 2 cents and borrowing 4?
2 cents and then borrowing, and the reason this says on the screen 2.8 million is because basically you're only going to take in out of that 4 million whatever amount you need for capital. So this nets out to 0. So basically you're paying for your capital. So this middle section is all capital related. And even if I change those numbers to whatever, it's a net 0. So the bottom line is raising 2 pennies and knowing that this debt service is going to handle capital needs. You're at an opening balance appropriation of right at $723,208 that would have to be pulled out of unassigned fund balance to make the budget balance.
So, Jennifer, on OneDrive, what's the name? Is that file here?
It's FY '26 admin budget,
Yeah.
410. It's the draft with 0.02.
Okay,
6M.
Got
Make
it.
sure you have the debt service model one. Now, the fund balance impact,
oops,
it keeps unassigned at 23%. So there's 2 tabs in this spreadsheet. One is the actual overall budget with the opening balance appropriation that would be needed, and the next is what your fund balance would look like. And it's coming out to, and this is without that, I don't think we have the asset maintenance replacement in here. We don't. So it's 23%. And so you'd be well above your 18%, which I think that one was like 8 million, you would need to set aside like $8,862. Yeah. So $11.4 million would be in the unassigned fund balance in this model. And again, this is a model. We don't know how fiscal year '25 is going to end. We know that we usually have some money turned back in, but we don't want to assume that in this model. So we're right on track on the county side with our expenses and revenues. So we have some contingency that might not be spent, but otherwise, it's maybe $200,000-300,000 that could fall back to fund balance at the end of FY '25. So yeah, on this tab, it shows you the effective fund balance on unassigned, and it also shows you what your actual debt stabilization, budget stabilization numbers look like, your joint services stabilization, those numbers. One is 1.4 million if I round it, one's 350,000 almost for joint services stabilization, and that's covering things like VPA, CSA if they run over, the regional jail if we have a higher amount of population that ends up there and our bills go higher, that helps with that, and same with juvenile detention in the health department. So we would set aside $350,000 for joint services stabilization. And yeah, your 18% would be $8,862,000, or $8,862,443 is what unassigned fund balance would be the minimum of unassigned fund balance. Can't go any lower than that to keep to be at your 18%. So if this model shows you'd be at 11,384, that's the difference between 11,384 and the 8.8 is what you have left over in unassigned fund balance that you could use. And then the asset replacement, I did throw that number in just in case, so you could look at it. Our contingency fund is showing, it's coming out to 293,390 is what it's calculating out to be. And that includes the adding that 15K for that third attorney position in there. And then the last metrics are your net general bonded debt as a percentage of assessed value. And these metrics should be, the target is below 3% for the one and below 10 for the other. And as you can see, we are, as of our audit for FY '24, those are very healthy. And then the last one is based on the any amendment to the budget which exceeds 1% of total expenditures must be accomplished by publishing a notice of the meeting of a public hearing. And so that's calculating out to 492,358, if I'm calculating it correctly. I need to go back to my notes and make sure that that's the schools and the county expenses. I may need to put CSA and VPAs in, I'm not sure, but I'll check on that.
Should an amendment be necessary?
Correct. That's just to show you what, we would have to know what that amount was. So I really just, Mr. Chairman, wanted to show again a snapshot of the 2-penny increase and how that impacts opening balance appropriation and your fund balance, specifically, most specifically unassigned.
If I may recall, the last time we looked at this before debt financing, I think one of the scenarios, it was either 2 or 3, there were 3 scenarios overall. If you did 3-cent increase on real estate, you had an open appropriation of $3.2 million coming out of fund balance to do your capital, it would leave you no more pay-go or any of that opportunity. You would be at your minimum fund balance of 18% required. Yeah, I mean, you just would have no wiggle room. So the debt financing is at a 2 cent, as Jennifer's already covered. That first year is kind of interest only, and the thought is your interest earned income would pay for that first year. I believe it's the third year that full debt payment of additional debt would kick in. You have an annual debt payment right now of a 1.7 million. So that new debt of a little over, I think it's 700,000 or so, of course, closing and all that will determine. That's for a 7-year period, as recommended by Davenport and we've discussed. So this keeps you at 23 versus 18. It does less you all have to make a decision. You still have a public hearing coming up. But you advertise up to a maximum 3 cent. This would allow you to back that down for your consideration at 2 cents, and trying to make sure we're not getting near that threshold of our fund balance minimum policy.
Yeah, so scenario 2, last go around, we were at the 723, but that was with 2 cent and borrowing 6. Now we've cut the CIP down to 4, so now we're talking 2 cents and borrowing 4. Is that
With an open appropriation
Right.
of,
720.
So the,
723?
yes, and that opening balance appropriation number stays the same. And as far as the capital side, even though we've reduced capital, it doesn't make a difference for it doesn't make a difference because we're using the borrowed funds to pay for capital and not unassigned fund balance at all, so.
Seems like a fairly, is not anything that anybody here wants to do in any way. But that does seem to be a kind of a fiscally responsible type of plan. I do think we need to go, I'm gonna lean back on Ms. Warren and Jonathan. I do think we need to talk about staffing levels and potential of savings there.
we have that in your
Yes, you do.
folder, Mr. Chairman, if you want that brought up on the screen now.
Is that where you think we're at this junction? Or is there anything else we need to go over?
So your existing budget does not have those reductions in it, but certainly, I know at least a few of you have talked to me about additional things to consider. So we do have that, Mr. Chairman. I don't think there's anything else. I mean, at some point, we need a recap of what's the total contribution to the schools. Of course, you have a budget public hearing on May 13th. You have a tax rates public hearing next Tuesday. So there's some time between now and that meeting on May 13th. But I think we should recap, once you look at these positions and make decisions, kind of tell you where we're at on the numbers with school operating. Capital, we just talked about.
And this, if you'd like to revisit.
Yes, that.
This is the list of, I can make this bigger.
Please.
That's on
Yeah, which file is it?
Yeah, this is the
Yeah.
last week. This is the PowerPoint, or you could pull the PDF
Oops.
up.
Come back here.
And where I think, while you're pulling this up, where I think it's important to cover, I mean, we've talked insurance, we've talked COLAs. Yes, we don't look over the fact that that's in there, and that's a benefit. But you will also see overall operational increases, whether it's internal departments or with things such as transfer station, CSA, which is, it's sometimes beyond their control. So that's where you can really see your big numbers as far as increases from last year.
So the schools would be getting the 677, 799 like we previously discussed.
Right?
Correct.
Yep.
That was what was in last week's presentation.
Yeah.
The Commonwealth's attorney increase of 130, that, the main one, driver of that is the third attorney position, correct? So I just wanted to point that out.
We may
At
need
the-
to, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman,
No,
please.
at the current funding level with 15 put into contingency as an option. Is that right?
Correct. We have the 15 in
Yeah.
contingency, and then the rest of the salary and fringe in the operating.
And I think there may be a change in there, and forgive me, Ms. Warren, I don't know if we're going to try to handle that administratively and try to balance it out, or that we did learn something new on that department. That there's going to be a change of health insurance coverage for one of the individuals that will require I think an additional 13K in the fringe benefit category.
So, I mean, I did want to point out, county admin, the radio tower maintenance, again, I'll just point this out one more time. That is a brand-new expense, and that is a maintenance on the new radio tower system that is an annual expense. And that's one penny right there, $297,000.
Yeah, we've known for 4 years that was coming.
And there's no play.
No.
This is direct core functions of government.
So that one was a brand-new one. All the rest, you can see the departments and the change from last year.
The third attorney, what the comp board's paying for, how much of that?
I think it's, is it 75 or
The
not?
grant that we're talking about, I want to say is around 60,000, 65, maybe 70.
We're at what, we have it advertised at 75 plus the
Oh.
option of the 15.
Right,
So, I mean, we're coming a little just shy of half, but yeah.
correct. And as we know too, we did lose some SRO grant funding. That's also an impact to this year's budget.
What else do you have on this, Mr. Warren? Everybody sort of have a grasp on where we're at currently?
Yeah, when you talk about people changing health insurance and blah, 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 I mean, that's gonna happen throughout the year.
It is, so I don't want to
Somebody's gonna
single
leave
out
and-
an individual. I mean, that happens. You have a
Yes.
change in coverage.
Right.
Let's go to the four positions, please.
Okay.
Or do you have other things you'd like to highlight on here, Mr. Warren?
I don't, unless you want to
Anybody?
talk about any of these.
Let's go to those four positions, please. I don't know, as many different versions of this are in the OneDrive. I'm having challenges keeping up with which file we're on. I apologize.
Yeah,
try to
just
make this bigger.
tell us,
So-
where are we?
At the bottom.
This
So-
is called vacant positions. It's an Excel spreadsheet in the folder.
Which folder,
Today's
Today?
folder, under admin budget.
So I had a few of you, and I think I've had discussions with maybe
Okay.
Paul, but about, okay, have we gone back to departments or can we go back again? My initial answer is we have. When Jennifer presented that one, the first time, I forget what date it was, maybe mid-March or whatever, but there was an admin revisions column that we were working on, and that reduced, I think, well over $1 million in reductions. And that was based on at least two different times, probably more, of scanning departments, looking at historical trends, seeing if they had any one-off items, looking at budget versus actuals, all of that. So we did that. But to be fair, and I know the chairman and I have had discussion on this, I know the superintendent of schools and I have had discussion on their side of the house, is what do we have position-wise here? Why I don't fully maybe recommend all of those, it is fair, it's my job to put up what you have currently available that is open. You have an animal shelter part-time position that is vacant right now, we have tried to hire for. You have recently an opening at Permit Tech. And these are fringes and all, so that's not just salary number, let me just state that for the record. The IT position, as you know, you had a recent promotion. That department head is here today. That would be whatever if you decided to advertise for, that's salary plus fringes. And then the PRA position you all discussed, if you wanted to fund converting an existing PTE or part-time to full-time. Those are the numbers, if you want to look at those. I've spoken with, a few individuals that run those departments just for some feedback. I don't know if you want that, but that's what I was asked and what I've asked Jennifer to put together to present to you for discussion.
And I would like to add on the building and zoning permit tech position, that fringe, which is coming out to a little over $27,000 in fringe, includes family coverage, healthcare. You don't know, I just wanted to use what the existing was. And the IT tech, I used, I want to say, individual coverage.
Yeah, like FICA, VRS, health insurance, all that's in that number plus salary.
Yeah, like, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm at the point with Band-Aid pulling. I think I've used it in 3 meetings now, so probably need to stop that. What's been discussed at this junction is getting rid of the animal shelter part-time and then potentially getting rid of the B and Z, building and zoning, permit tech position. That would put us at 101,448 as far as savings. I think the IT position, we have to continue. I think we were at least 5 years behind implementing an IT department, with the ERP system, the Laserfish, what's the other one? There's another one down there.
You have Laserfish,
Tyler,
Tyler, and Avinity.
Avinity, there you go. With us so heavy on this and then seemingly a never-ending supply of servers, I don't see how we can cut IT.
So I will speak, I mean, again, this is your decision, not mine. If I'm looking at critical ones up there, of course, you have to look at your permit level. When I first got here at this position, you were down 1 permit tech. That was before implementing your ERP, which the county had already made a decision to do that. And then your permits took off. Building took off once the pandemic was claimed to be over. So I've asked Jamie, what does this mean? Certainly that leaves you with 1 permit tech. You can say, okay, try to cover that when they're out, whether it's sick vacation or they're out training, getting recertified in the various things. It is the workload there. Not every day. I know there are some days. There are many days I would say Jamie is out in the field more than he is in the office, which means he's doing inspections. So Mr. Sexton does our ENS. You heard from a citizen the other day about the workload on that department. What we have done down there is have multiple disciplines. Carl, for example, is various building inspection certifications as well as ENS. So if we had to have a fallback, we have that there. Jamie's the bill official, so he can do all disciplines. I think he's our lead on commercial. The zoning administration side of that, these building permit technician positions, they do building and zoning, whether it's permit entry, they do the invoicing, the billing, they do the office manager role, the advertising, the posting, the deadlines. One of those positions, which is the vacant position, was also doing the clerical for planning commission and BZA. So those are just a little bit of feedback of how that position is being utilized and what that may mean for that department if that position goes away. I don't know how you feel about PRA. If you ask me to prioritize the two, I would probably ask to keep the building and zoning permit tech and forego the PRA position if it means to salvage that permit tech. And that's no offense to Parks and Rec. I'm just trying to think of workload and, what that means in getting permits out the door for our citizens and ultimately who are our customers.
Yeah, well, I think, all right, let's talk about the permit tech, 87.7. My word, if you take 27,000 off of that, which, I mean, I was using 35% fringe, because that's what I've been seeing with the schools into here. And that gives you a starting salary of 60-some thousand.
It's 60,170.
Yeah, that's way too high.
You think we need to be down there around 45?
Yeah.
Yep. What step and grade would 45 be?
One thing to consider on that is, we did do the comp study and the minimum grade. We'll look at that. Let me pull that up for us. We'd have to make sure we're at
I
the
was going
minimum
to say,
grade.
we need to go to comp study for that
Yeah,
position.
Jonathan, so is the permit tech, is that, I'm thinking it's more clerical than anything, perhaps, or not, maybe I'm way off on that. It's more than clerical, is that what you're saying?
That position that's vacant now, the way that position was set up, or we would like to see that position used, it would not only do permit tech entry, it would complement that zoning department So all the help, there are times where that individual will go along and do site visits with them. They may be utilized, not often, but hey, if I'm working on this, can you go to the courthouse, whether it's remote server access or go up to courthouse and review, research some things. So it was more of a complementary to that. The reason why that salary went up, one, you had a market study. Two, they got their DHCD certification and they got a recent zoning certification. So all those things add to it. Plus, if you do COLAs over the year, that's why that salary is what it
Yeah,
is.
so you did the market study and based on, I think at the time, it was probably April, who was, you know, way up here. Is that's what's needed to process, the folks that are coming in the door. I don't know, I've never gone in to do it.
Didn't we do
What are you
market
looking
study
at?
two different levels
Huh?
of permit tech?
Oh, no, this
Yeah,
was
so-
4 or 5 years ago.
Oh, you talking?
So,
I can pull
I
up
mean,
the
that person
building
could come
zoning.
in
You're thinking,
clerical and then learning and moving up, but I don't know, it's.
I think that position
Might be
does start at
complicated doing that
40,000, for the
We'll have to look.
pay
There's-
grade.
There's two different levels. There's the level that Ms. Richards currently has. I thought there was a difference in maybe one grade. I could be misremembering, but I'm pretty sure.
So when a contractor comes in, that's their first introduction to a person in that office, is that right?
Correct.
And that person is gonna take down the information,
Yeah,
enter
so
something
you have a
into
grade
a
12,
system,
not the grade
and then do
11.
minutes.
and then
Pay
do
grade's
the minutes.
11 for building
You're-
permit.
I mean, until
Oh,
they
this one. I
learn
was looking
how
at the
to
wrong one.
do zoning or building.
You were insinuating essentially that if we're getting somebody that is completely green,
Yes,
that the starting salary should be down there at 40 to 45, and anticipate on hiring somebody with that skill set instead of way up the
and
ladder.
growing it, yeah.
Absolutely.
I don't know,
And to,
It-
sorry,
Go ahead, please.
just wanted to clarify, that 60K,
yeah.
that was assuming the 3% COLA for FY '26 was calculated in that. So this year, it wasn't that much,
Yeah,
but
okay.
next year.
Do you have the, so we know it's a grade 12, so if you look, yeah, I did remember correctly. So the building permit technician's a grade 11, and the building and zoning technician is a grade 12. Can you go, do you have the salary sheet that has the pay grade to see where that mid, max?
Alan,
I'd like to hear
Alan
from
last,
Jamie and Alan.
Alan last night alluded with the planning commission. He was taking his own minutes last night, and I know he's doing it with AI, so that's great. He did say that Alan's working with him to kind of, Alan and Kim are working with him to kind of make that AI thing work, 4 minutes.
In the interim, yeah.
In the interim, he did talk about last night, that his workload has gone up, just
That's
because he's doing permits doing, all zoning stuff during the day, and then late in the afternoon, he's doing a lot of data entry.
Yeah.
So it looks like this is a grade 13 position, starts at 44,825, and goes to 67,925. The person that was in that position had a lot of certifications, and so that's why they were at the higher.
Right, so Jonathan, does that person need those certifications right out of the chute?
I think the DHCD, because that is a minimum not only for the building permit tech, but the building and zoning tech. So I would at least leave that in there. We can back out the zoning stuff if we don't want that, and they can kind of grow into that. If you were to say, keep this position today and fill it, then we would look, I operate between the minimum and midpoint, and it's based on what certs they have coming in. So if someone comes in off the street green, it would be that minimum of that grade. And then you normally get, I'm gonna speak off memory, this number may not be correct, because I know there are certain certifications in the inspection fields that warrant, I think it's like a $2,000 or $2,500 annual increase. That's probably what it is for the DHCD certification.
How many permits are we getting in now compared to last year, year before, 2 years before? And is it just decks and remodels, or is it new build? And does that make a difference in the?
I know the last several years, it's been definitely higher on the additions in the construction, new construction. This year, I'd have to get that number from Jamie. I could probably pull up the last month's department head report, but I do know we are getting a lot more of those decks and things of that nature than the newer construction.
Does that make a difference in work order? Is it the same amount of work?
Permit, I mean, you're still gonna enter permits. It's not bringing in the revenue, right? There is a difference for that. But it would be about the same amount of work, you know, when it comes to entry. It may be a little less on the planning review side, but that's done by Jamie than it is the permit tech. I mean, we saw a drop off this year. I don't know what our year-to-date was. I think we budgeted, this is on the building permit side, so that's physical framing. The electrical and plumbing are all handled different. I think we put a budget of 150,000 of revenue, and we were maybe at 55% year-to-date. So we've seen a drop. This is the first year we've seen a drop in the last 3 years.
Although I will say that the way Munis is now calculating it, it's in several different revenue categories now, where last year it was only in one, because now we're billing out of Munis. So, but I can look up that number year-to-date if you'd like.
And the other, I'm sorry.
It's interesting to see that number as, so we, if we're gonna hire for that position, maybe it is a lower tier hire. And they can train up as we get busier again in the county.
And I fully subscribe to that. The other concern here, and I know he has it in here, is that you just don't want to burn out your current folks. So if you could start them at a lower, it reduces your overall budget, maybe that makes you rethink it. Ultimately, you're going to follow your direction of decide today.
You got three options. That's what we've got. Specifically on building and zoning permit tech. I think you leave it, you completely pull it, or you reduce that salary by 20K, put that 20K in contingency, and if we don't have to do it, it rolls right back over.
What if you do a part-time position and it's not an outward-facing position that just simply enters the stuff in the computer?
You have to try to find them. That's the main thing.
That's a problem.
You would,
Okay.
unfortunately, it is. I mean, in years past, when I was sitting with you guys, I mean, you could get by as a different market. You could do part-time. Now it's, what's the amount of hours and the wage that someone want to come work? You know, some of our positions like that animal shelter position, the reason why it's been hard to fill, it's like, I think, a 16-hour position. We don't need another FTE out there, but we certainly wouldn't ask for that. But can you get somebody for 16 hours? Same thing on permit tech, you know, and what does that amount of hours look like, you know, for that department? So it's a good thought. It's just what the market where we're at today.
All right, yeah, okay, I want to go with, I think that permit tech is still needed.
So, do you
So
wanna
go
re- do you wanna-
44,000 range
plus,
salary.
plus the cap on, benefits at the family level at 27K? So essentially, you're
I don't
pulling.
know whether we can do that.
Yeah, I don't know if we can cap
But-
you.
But
No,
that's
I'm
the
saying
highest,
that
yeah. Oh, for budgeting purposes.
For budgeting purposes,
Sure.
Ms. Warren said that the existing,
Yeah.
or the previous holder of that position was utilizing the family plan at 27K.
Right.
Is that about as high as it will be, Ms. Warren?
Yes, 13, I think that the county's contribution to a family plan is around 13 a year, 13K, so that's the highest.
So,
I think you have a fourth option, though. Your fourth option would be to wait a year and do it in the next year's budget to see where this
Agreed.
goes.
But we've got a
Agreed.
new zoning administrator that's doing a great job.
He is.
I don't wanna bury him. You know, he is, you cannot bury him with clerical stuff.
and he is doing a good job, like he is, and his, there's another one that, they talked about last night at the planning commission, new state law going into effect, it appears July 1st,
Oh, yeah,
2025.
that too.
Where he is going to be, site plans and subdivisions are not going to be coming to the planning commission anymore.
And
That
it-
is going to be administratively handled, at his level.
Yeah, nor us, right?
No,
It doesn't come to the board
right,
either.
nobody.
Is that right, Jim? That's the way you read
And
it?
that bill shortened,
Huh?
and it, exactly, and it shortened the time period that we have to cycle those. So he is
5 days or something crazy.
25, I think on the isn't it the first poll, Everything has to be identified, and then if he rejects and he identifies something else that he didn't get in the first poll, we can't address it all.
That's correct. And the state agency turnaround time is lessened as well, so.
So anyhow,
I,
I just, and I think it's a
I
good
think
point
we
that
need-
I don't
Mr.
know,
Yao
that
made.
one's got it. This argument's definitely worked. I did come in thinking that we could probably get away from that one. I do think we should put it in as, at 67 and then put 20 in contingency. Hopefully we will not have to use it. It doesn't lessen the budget impact at all, really, but it does give us a little bit more flexibility and a little bit of reserve, hopefully. The other one that is, I think, is worth mentioning, and the schools worked with us like crazy the other day, and they really did. Can't emphasize that enough. They do have a sheet that is out. Since 2019, they've lost and combined 16 and a half positions, and that does have about a $1.2 million savings since 2019. I do think it's worth noting.
all right, my other one on PRA, there's no question in my mind that they don't need that, but I question the 45,910 big time, because I take 45,910, I divide it by 1.31, I get a base salary of 35,000, and that's certainly plenty to pay your bills, to pay the bills, to reconcile the bank statements, to deal with the credit card companies, and all that kind of stuff, and to produce the financial statements. I don't know how the change from part-time to full-time could cost an extra 45,910 is what it's saying, right?
What amount are you adding as far as fringe on that? Mr.
So
31%.
the way the calculation is in the Parks and Rec budget, their part-time person right now is not on the county's payroll, it's in their budget. If this position were to move to full-time, this person would be then paid through us in our payroll. The salary is $38,730 a year for that position. That's
Right.
the low point of the grade. The fringe was 4217 plus 2963, so that's with VRS. And this doesn't include health insurance because that person does not need health insurance. So if health insurance were in here, it would be a lot more.
So that 45,910, that's bottom line, that's not the it's an increase to, it's all the same money. It came
Yeah.
out of their budget.
So the savings, they would still have to pay that person on a part-time basis. If you didn't convert it to full-time through the Parks and Rec payroll, it would just be that you would save that full-time salary amount of 45,000, but on their side, they would still have that expense of a part-time person.
My question is, if, like, I know this person may not need benefits, but if she finds another job and somebody else moves that, we have to provide those benefits, correct?
Correct. Another option would be you could make it a 30-hour per week position, and that person would be eligible only for health insurance, not for paid holidays or for VRS. And I did speak to Lindsay about that. If the board wasn't in favor of the full-time, at least the 30 hours would help tremendously,
Yeah,
so.
that's true. Lindsay, she is quite the visionary, okay? And she's gone to a lot of training on Parks and Rec stuff. She's got good ideas that would create revenue out there, and we need to be able to turn her loose instead of her calling me, you know, when I'm at work saying, can you come over here, because we got an issue with filing the the 941s or something. She shouldn't be doing that, you know? So that's why I'm adamant that this position needs to be increased. Now, 30 hours, if she'd be happy with that, I'd be happy with that. If you talk to her at all,
She wants the position. I
Yeah.
mean, there's no ifs, ands, and buts. I mean, I don't think even with how much are we saving at 30 hours, Ms. Warren?
The position's $18.62 an hour, so we could do the math on that.
Hoover Ridge has got a lot of potential. And if we could
And
start
they
getting,
continue doing more
Huh?
and more. They continue to do more and more and more.
They have more programs.
And then now we're going down this path on this playground splash pad and all of that, and we know that there'll be additional needs there. We may be premature on this, and maybe that'll prevent having to add another couple people when that comes online. What is it?
It's roughly, on the salary part, $9,700. If you assume 10 hours less a week, from
Yes.
40 to 30 hours, and then a
Yes.
fringe, it would
All right, well then,
be another
why
maybe,
wouldn't those administrative
with
tasks be
FICA
absorbed into
and
the current
VRS,
department?
probably 1,200, 1,300.
Speak to that.
Yeah, that's a good
Mr.
comment.
Jewett's asking the questions, when we bring them over to this department, would any of that administrative stuff come over to us?
Oh, that's a good one.
Yes.
That's a good comment.
Yes, it
Yeah,
would,
I'm saying, if
That
their
may-
payroll and everything, wouldn't it be done here, if their
Right.
department?
yes.
That's a good comment.
And
What about going?
okay,
What about going to the 30 hours?
and paying all their bills and all that stuff will come through here too then, huh? Their
Well,
invoices?
when the merge
Yeah,
happens,
when we pull them over, yes, sir.
we would, on the finance department, we would do accounts payable.
Yeah.
Tilly and HR would do payroll, and we also do some
Yeah,
billing
that's
as
a good
well.
one,
But I think we talked about certain things staying with PRA. right?
Yeah, we would need to talk with primarily Lindsay. I mean, I don't want to not recognize Jerry as well as the manager, but to maybe see if this position could help us, because Tilly is a party of one. I mean, we have some redundancy. Ms. Warren has many of skill sets, but she does a lot of other stuff. We want to keep her away from benefit administration, all that stuff. But we would want to see maybe if that individual can help in certain areas that may be needed. So there'd still be a small portion, but to Mr. Jewett's point, yes, a lot of those things would come over and hit either through AP or HR or, finance as a whole.
Then let's go 30.
Yeah. That work? Work?
Yeah.
Let's do that. There you go.
So what is that?
So we're holding off on the animal shelter position. We'll do 30 hours with Parks and Rec. And do the IT position and then leave the BZA, or building and zoning permit tech minus 20 with 20 put into the contingency. All right.
I think basically
So,
take 20Ks with
The
this.
recommendations at this point, and there will be adjustments now, we're talking about 723,000 as a beginning appropriation, 2-cent tax hike, $4 million borrowing, and that's about where we're at.
Yeah. So, it's kind of odd that we would have, that this coming Tuesday's meeting, we will set these tax rates. And then 3 weeks later or a month later, we will have a public hearing about the budget. Somebody stands up during the budget and comes up with some incredible suggestion that saves us gazillion dollars, and we can turn around and change the tax rates?
You'd have to have another public hearing, but
Yeah.
yes, but what deadline, well, because the state code now makes you separate your tax rate, public
I know,
hearing. Yeah.
I know.
But we got to have a budget transmitted over to the schools by May 15th as well, so we're up
Mine
against
isn't
the.
right.
It's backwards.
Okay.
It's certainly backwards. We can,
Yeah, but
let's go
anyhow.
down the path. If we if somebody comes up with that, and please, somebody should come up with this savings of gazillion dollars.
Yeah. We will
Anybody
certainly
that's got
figure out
it,
a
we're
way
taking
to address
suggestions from everybody. If you've got it, then that's just what we have. And if we have the ability, certainly, to reduce the tax rate or the beginning appropriations or the borrowing of funds, there is nobody sitting here that will not go down that direction, I am sure.
Yeah, okay.
There's no good here at all. Like, I mean, that's just what it is. I made the comment the other day to Judd, though, and I think we should emphasize it. Every year we go through this. It is doom and gloom. This year, it
That's our
seems like
job.
we're getting very, very close to that 18%, which fortunately, we have the right people in place, that we have figured out a mechanism to give the county a little bit of protection on this, through some pretty creative mechanisms. Every year it's like this. Nobody wants to do this. I mean, good Lord. Anybody else got anything on budget items? We do have a closed session.
I will make a comment, Mr. Chairman, and I really thank the county staff for what they've done on this. You know, it's, the problem is our spending trajectory is outpacing our revenue trajectory on our current tax base, which is, you know, you and I have had the discussion, we're 10 years behind economic development. And we do have a plan in place to address that, but it's not going to rectify the situation in the near term. So we're really kind of in a corner, which is a place you never want to be. But I'm thinking about the capital, our capital planning. We should be in the position, and hopefully we will be someday, where we can have a 5-year annualized contribution from revenues, put it into a SNAP account, earn the interest, and not have to pay the interest on borrowed money. That's really where we should be, and I hope that's something that we can strive to accomplish in the intermediate future. But again, thanks to the staff, Ms. Warren, financial wizard, Jonathan, thank you, Brian. It's just not easy. There are no easy choices here.
And thanks, Tina, and you
Absolutely.
guys. That was,
Absolutely. All right, anybody else got anything? Anybody? All right, let's do public comment again. Public comment. Good, hand signals, this is better. Any public comment? All right, thank y'all for coming. We do have a closed session. Card?
So, Mr. Chairman, I move that the board convene in a closed session pursuant to Virginia Code Sections 2.2-3711A1 for personnel.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.